Hey there, my name is Cordy Craig and I am the Placer Prescribed Burn Association Coordinator. So in this video, I'll explain some of the basics associated with prescribed fire in California. Throughout the presentation, I'll be using the terms prescribed burn and broadcast burn synonymously to describe burns that are intentionally set to achieve management objectives such as fuels reduction, native plant stewardship, or range improvement. This presentation will not be discussing pile burning. So when planning a prescribed burn, it's really important for landowners who are interested in utilizing this tool to understand the laws of liability in California. It's not possible to cover the state's entire prescribed burn legislation in just under 10 minutes, but this video will briefly discuss the basics of what landowners should consider before implementing. So to learn more about the laws surrounding prescribed fire, we really encourage folks to attend one of Placer RCD's workshops. So in the United States, there are 3 liability standards to lawsuits involved in prescribed burns. As you can see on this map, there's strict liability, simple negligence, and gross negligence. So the liability standard is determined at the state level. And these 3 standards fall on a spectrum of consequences on the burn practitioner. So strict liability is on one side of the spectrum, and it's the most stringent of the 3 standards. Gross negligence, on the other hand, falls on the opposite side and grants more leniency for the burn practitioner. Strict liability holds burners liable for any property damage caused by an escaped burn, regardless of the action of the burner. And this standard is enforced only in the states of Wisconsin and Minnesota. So on the other end, more lenient side, we have gross negligence. So right now, only 4 states have gross negligence standards, including Florida, Georgia, Michigan, and Nevada. However, earlier this year, California passed Senate Bill 332, which grants certified burn bosses and cultural burners to work under gross negligence standard, relieving some of the liability associated with the costs of suppression. So what this means is that it does not protect against criminal liability, meaning if your burn escapes containment lines and burns down your neighbor's house, you're still liable for damages. It only covers the costs of suppression if CAL FIRE shows up and suppresses your burn. So landowners who want to fall under the gross negligence standard but are not cultural burners or state certified burn bosses themselves must hire a certified burn boss to review and sign off on the burn plan. So on the day of operations, the burn boss does not have to be present, but the landowner must follow the restrictions outlined in the burn plan exactly in order to be eligible for gross negligence. Hiring a certified burn boss to write a burn plan can be expensive, and the cost to write the burn plan on average starts somewhere around $2,000. So California falls somewhere in the middle of that spectrum between strict and gross negligence, strict liability and gross negligence, and we are considered a simple negligence state for most landowners. So that means that most landowners who have an escaped burn may be held legally responsible for harm if reasonable care wasn't taken. And this is the most common liability standard in the United States for prescribed burning. It is still legal and possible for landowners to conduct low complexity prescribed burns under the simple negligence standard, but it is important that one takes the necessary steps to demonstrate due diligence and mitigate any risks to prevent the loss of control or an escape of a prescribed burn. So I mentioned demonstrating due diligence. What does that actually mean? So due diligence is defined as the care that a reasonable person exercises to avoid harm to other people or property. Demonstrating due diligence when planning and implementing a prescribed burn ultimately comes down to showing that the process was evaluated and mitigations were taken to reduce any risk of damages or escapes. So demonstrating due diligence comes in the form of both administrative actions and operational actions. And what I mean by that is that documenting your thoughts and acquiring the appropriate permits is just as important as building containment lines and ensuring that you and your personnel are well equipped on the ground. So some of those administrative action items include writing a burn plan. So Placer RCD and the PBA encourages all landowners, regardless of how small your burn is, but especially among landowners who have never burned before, to write a burn plan both as a demonstration of due diligence and as an exercise in thinking through the prep and implementation processes prior to burning. So a burn plan shows that you've thought about various scenarios that could happen, you're prepared to handle them should circumstances change, and that you have an appropriate weather prescription that should be followed on the day of your burn. Templates for simple burn plans can be found on the Cal PBA website, and Placer PBA is working on a Placer County specific template that will be posted on our website soon. Another way of demonstrating due diligence administratively is making sure that you've acquired all of the necessary permits prior to burning. In Placer County, air quality permits are required year-round, and CAL FIRE permits are required sometimes. Please watch the next video on permitting to understand more about how and when to acquire the necessary permits to broadcast burn in Placer County. In addition, notifications are really important. So you should be notifying important contacts before and on the day of your burn. It's strongly encouraged to reach out to neighbors ahead of time and involve them in the planning and implementation of your prescribed burn. It's also necessary to notify CAL FIRE and Air District representatives on the day of your burn. The reason this is really important, we strongly encourage this, is that sometimes tourists or folks in the area that are not familiar with the practice of burning will call these agencies to report your burn as a wildfire. If they're aware of the location of your broadcast burn, it not only avoids an unnecessary dispatch of resources, but it also provides the opportunity for education and outreach with the folks who reported the fire. So in Placer County, local CAL FIRE unit and the Air District are strongly supportive of prescribed burns that are conducted safely and legally. So operationally, there are also several things that you can do to demonstrate due diligence, and that includes prepping the unit. So this means removing any ladder fuels, building containment lines, and protecting values at risk. So if your property is a dense fir thicket or a field of manzanita, it's not quite ready for the application of fire. In addition, making containment lines to reduce any risk of escape. So when you make containment lines, those are generally about 4 feet in width. You can also use existing roads and other natural fire breaks, such as green grass, in order to serve as a containment line. Prep also involves identifying and protecting any values at risk. So this could be a wooden shed or a structure, even a large mature tree that you don't want damaged from heat or charring. Volunteers and landowners can use a hand tool to scrape fuels away from the valued item to reduce heat damage. In addition, make sure that you have the necessary suppression equipment and access to water and personnel to safely complete the burn, mop up, and patrol. So Placer RCD is developing a gear cache that is free to use to Placer PBA members and will include a lot of really necessary equipment such as bladder bags, hand tools, drip torches, etc. You should also familiarize yourself with the weather forecast and typical daily weather patterns on your burn unit. Make sure to monitor the weather before you ignite as well as at regular intervals during your burn. The Placer PBA gear cache also has several Kestrel weather meters for PBA members to borrow when they burn. The Placer RCD prescribed fire workshops also include lots of weather resources to explore for landowners. So liability can be really intimidating, and we understand that. But once one understands how to appropriately mitigate any hazards, acquire the appropriate permits, and follow the law, landowners should feel safe implementing prescribed burns. Thank you for watching this short video on liability concerning prescribed burns. To learn more, or if you're left with more questions, sign up for some of the RCD's prescribed fire workshops, which are featured in the events calendar. For questions about the content of this video or other concerns regarding prescribed fire, please contact me at the email posted on this slide. Everybody and anybody is welcome to join the Placer PBA. Follow the link below to sign up. Thanks again for listening. We really look forward to burning with you and making our forests and communities more fire resilient.